Cooper Flagg came to town for the first time as an NBA player, and the Raptors said welcome to Toronto by handing the rookie phenom a rude L. Let's talk about it.
This is the Raptors Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Toronto Raptors. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of the Raptors Postcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network covering your team every day. And we're coming to you live after the Raptors 122-92 win against the Dallas Mavericks on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Locked On Podcast feed. I'm Zulfi Sheikh, credentialed journalist covering the Raptors and the NBA for over 2 years now with outlets like Sportsnet and Raptors Republic. And now I'm one of your humble hosts of the Raptors Postcast, breaking down each and every game with you. And unfortunately, not with me today is Dwayne Notice, aka Dino. Professional basketball player and analyst is out hooping currently as he does, so I will be holding it down without him. And on tonight's show, we're going to be talking about how the Raptors return to form for a much-needed victory. We're going to break down their suffocating effort defensively, get some thoughts on the segment we like to call Take Notice, and then we'll wrap things up by handing out our player of the game. And for the Raptors, basically, after a run of losses against top 10 teams, they were in a bit of a skid, and they were gifted a matchup against the 12th-seeded Dallas Mavericks, who were on a 6-game losing streak of their own. Now, look, I know it's the NBA, and there's no guarantees here. The Raptors actually lost to the Mavericks, or albeit a very different-looking Mavericks team, towards the start of the season when they started 1-4. But the Raptors made the most of the opportunity here. They were facing a team that they were better than on paper, and they took advantage of that, showing it on the court. They get back in the win column in an emphatic fashion with a 30-point victory. And look, first of all, the defense, like I said, it was suffocating. They held the Mavericks to under 40% shooting from the field. They held the Mavericks to under 17% shooting from downtown. They forced 20 turnovers for 27 points. Again, in today's NBA, holding a team to under 100 points, under 95 points, honestly, is very impressive defensively. The Raptors very much were the more physical team. They were the more aggressive team. The Mavericks only made 5 threes, again, on under 17% shooting from beyond the arc. So the Raptors defense really did carry this effort. But on the other side of it, the offense was also dynamic and efficient. They shot over 50% from the field. They were over 75% shooting at the rim, and they ended up being plus 12 in the paint. So they were really getting to the basket in this game. 39 assists on 48 made field goals. And I think that was really important because that was essentially how the Raptors were breaking a lot of the zone that was being thrown at them by the Mavericks. They weaponized their passing. They're able to find the soft spots in the defense. And when the defense tilted in that zone, the Raptors made the right reads and were able to finish effectively because of it. They generated good looks. They were able to make their shots today. Again, it wasn't the most stellar night from downtown or anything. The Raptors end up shooting 27.8% from three. They go 10 of 36. But the rest of their looks that they were generating were quality, and they were getting to the basket at a good rate. And we've talked about this a lot, about the Raptors needing to return to their principles. And this was huge for that because they turned defense into offense consistently. And like I said, 20 turnovers for 27 points got them running and going, and that's when the Raptors offense is at its best. They end up winning the transition battle 21-4. It was quality offense for most of the night. And it was productive offense and productive performances for this team up and down the roster. The Raptors ended up finishing with 8 double-digit scorers. RJ Barrett led the way with a season-high 31 points. Jakob Poeltl had a double-double. Scotty had a team-high. He was a team-high plus 25. Mamu, Grady, and Jacoby all with 10-plus points off the bench, and we're going to talk about the bench production later as well. But beyond all of that, the most important thing, I believe, for the Raptors was they were able to do it for a full 48 minutes. That's what Darko Rajakovic kept saying, and that's what he wanted coming out of it. The Raptors had a couple of days off after their last game, that tough loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and Darko said they're very intentional in practice about what they wanted to accomplish and how they wanted to put together a full 48-minute effort. At halftime of this game, Daniel Michaud on the broadcast talked to Jacoby Walter, and his main thing was like, we're not satisfied with this. We know we have to put another half of basketball together, and that's the message from Darko was the entire time. So the Raptors were able to accomplish that in this game, regardless of who they did it against. That is a positive step for them. And ultimately, they improved to 36-27, and they snapped a 4-game home losing streak. And why all this is important, regardless of who it's against right now, even though we know they have their struggles against top 10 teams. We've talked about that ad nauseum. They're 4-17 against the top 10 of the NBA. That's something they're going to have to face at some point. But along the way, they do need to take care of business against the quote-unquote non-elite teams, or the rest, if you want to call it that, because the reality of the Raptors' schedule, and this is to their favor, is that 14 of their last 20 games are against non-top 10 teams. And the Raptors this season have done a good job of taking care of business against them. They're 31-10 against those teams, and they make up the majority of their schedule going down the stretch towards the playoffs. And that's going to be really important for their outlook going into the postseason, is because right now the Eastern Conference, especially seeds 5 through 9, if you want to call it that, it's a logjam. Only about a game and a half separates the Raptors, who are in 5th, from the 76ers, who are currently in 8th, who they dropped recently. So there's a very small margin of error. You need to find ways to stack victories. And with the Raptors, again, having a favorable schedule with most of their games basically against these non-top 10 teams, a game like tonight is a perfect momentum builder. It's a kind of, again, it's a get-right game is what I like to call it, and the Raptors rightfully took advantage of that. So the outcome was positive, and to see it where it was led by their principals, it was on a night where Brandon Ingram didn't necessarily have the most efficient game. He only finishes with 11 points on 4 of 12 shooting. Scotty Barnes, again, team at plus 25, but it's not like he had a monster offensive game, right? So 17 points on 6 of 12 shooting for him. So to see it led by their tertiary scorer and RJ Barrett, who's very much been returning for him lately, to see it led by very scrappy defense and the guys off the bench putting together productive efforts. Like I said, 3 10-plus point scorers off the bench for the Raptors. Those are all really good markers for them as they move forward, because it's not the same way we've seen before where it's been an over-reliance on a guy like Brandon Ingram. It's not where they're getting like out-muscled physically entirely. If the Mavs had one advantage, it was basically on the glass, and that was essentially because of Daniel Gafford. And the Raptors were able to limit the damage to just Daniel Gafford feasting inside. I think he finished with 21 points and 11 rebounds on 10 of 10 shooting. Now, if you're letting Daniel Gafford be the guy who's killing you and containing everything else, you can live with that a lot of nights, and the Raptors did, and that worked out really well for them in this game. Cooper Flagg, again, rookie phenom. We talked about it. He's special. He's averaging over 20 points per game in the NBA. The Raptors limit him to 17 points on 7 of 17 shooting. He has 4 turnovers as well. Scotty Barnes did a really good job on him defensively. In that very first quarter, I think Scotty, I mentioned it online, where that was kind of him saying, welcome to Toronto, where he picks Cooper Flagg's pocket clean right away, goes the other way and slams it down in transition. And then that was kind of the precursor for what Cooper's night was going to be. Now, he's an impactful rookie. He does a lot defensively as well, so it's not like he had a bad night by any means, but the Raptors were very much able to contain him, and that all started with their effort on the defensive end. And where that effort really, I felt like, turned the tide of this game was in the second quarter, and then that's the part I want to get to now in our turning point of the game.
This is what you'll be talking about.
All right, the second quarter specifically stood out to me, and why I felt like that really did basically not hand the game to the Raptors, but where they took control of it, is they limited the Dallas Mavericks to 15 points in the second quarter. Again, in today's NBA, that is just something you do not see all that often, and the Raptors were just so suffocating in terms of how they were scrapping from the first man to the eighth man when it came to the rotations and everything. Like a guy like Mamu was flying around and zipping around, deflecting passes. Emmanuel quickly at one point broke up an outlet pass in transition where he tipped it like he was a free safety. And when the ball's flying out of bounds, he gets it, he saves it, and it stays in bounds. The Raptors go the other way. They're not able to convert. But then the Mavericks are back in transition and quickly then gets a steal on that fast break. So like, so many guys that you're not necessarily used to making those defensive efforts, they were making them tonight. And again, I think that comes from the Raptors being prepared. They were understanding the scout for a lot of these things. Jacoby Walter at one point, he stripped Cooper Flagg on a spin move into the paint. And if you've been watching that Cooper Flagg, you know one of his patented moves is that spin into the paint through traffic. So again, Jacoby being mindful of that, he was able to strip the ball. That was awesome. The Raptors held the Mavericks to 27% shooting in the second quarter. In the first half alone, the Raptors had forced 11 turnovers for 13 points. I believe 5 of those turnovers came for the Mavericks in the second quarter. And then obviously, again, I mentioned fast break points in the first half. It was 11-0 for the Raptors. It ends up being 21-4. So that second quarter is where Toronto kind of took control of this game, and they got their defense to generate quality offense. And it kind of cascaded from there. They kept it going in the third quarter as well. Obviously, they won the third quarter by 9 points. I think in the third quarter, it was like something like 11 assists on 12 shots. It was really impressive offense being generated by defense and just trusting the pass, trusting the scout and the system. And that second quarter is, again, like where the flip really got switched for them. So that was awesome to see for them. But something else that was also very positive for the Raptors was their bench production in this game. And that's something we want to highlight as we continue this episode of the Raptors Postcast after this. All right, this episode is brought to you by Quo. Spring is a natural reset point, and if there's one thing that can quietly cost businesses money, it's messy communication. Missed calls, scattered texts, no clear thread of who said what, which is why today's episode is brought to you by Quo. That's spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. And if you're a fan of sports, obviously you are. If you're watching and listening to this, you know in team sports, communication is so important. Being on the same page like the Raptors were tonight to force those 20 turnovers, it makes all the difference when you're on the same page talking to each other. And that's what Quo helps with. And that's why Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2 with over 3,000 reviews and trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. It lets your entire team share one business number so you never miss a call, text, or opportunity. And what I love most is that everything lives in one clean thread. So that's calls, text, and voicemail. The whole team sees the conversation, so nothing falls through the cracks. And with the AI summaries, it saves you serious time by logging those calls and highlighting next steps automatically. So make this the season, no opportunity, and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonnba. That's quo.com/lockedonnba. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. This episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup. And it makes every dunk, every assist, and every big play that much more exciting. And like I said, there was lots of those for the Raptors tonight, so it would have been a good night for it, which is why Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports picks app, and it's super simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if your picks are right, you cash in. And you can build lineups across tons of different sports, whether that's basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, golf, and even college hoops, which it's the perfect time of year for. There's even the possibility of early payouts. If a player starts hot, you may have the option to cash out winnings before the game even finishes. So put your sports knowledge to the test and lock in on the action by downloading the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. And remember, with Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Last week's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board, and it's only about to get crazier with the madness that is college hoops in March. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with the college basketball parlay profit boost. Build any college hoops parlay. Build it however you want, from rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your read that day. And you can mix spreads, totals, and player props. So go safe, go bold, or even just back the team you've been with all season. It's your parlay done your way. And after that, simply apply the profit boost and instantly bump the potential payout. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. And remember, with FanDuel, play your game. All right, as we continue this episode of the Raptors Postcast, be sure to check out Sean Woodley with Locked On Raptors in the morning to get more in-depth analysis of the Raptors' 122-92 win over the Dallas Mavericks. And in the Take Notice segment, again, I'm filling in for our resident pro here, but something I did observe and I think is important to mention is the fact that this was a very good bounce-back game for the Raptors bench. Over the last 2 games, and I know that's a small sample, but it is important, the Raptors bench was averaging 16.5 points per game on under 30% shooting from the field. They were something like 7% from downtown in these 2 games. It was just a brutal 2-game stretch for the Raptors. Again, you're doing that against a quality Spurs team. That was against a very quality Timberwolves team as well. We take that into account, but you just truthfully need better production from the Raptors bench. And the fact is, the Raptors bench usually has been better than that. Over these last 2 games, like I said, 17 points, just under that. on the season, they average over 30 points a game. They average over 44% shooting from the field for the first 60 games of the season. So it was very uncharacteristic of them. And it was important that the Raptors were able to bounce back because we know how important their rotation and their depth is going to be when it comes to postseason matchups and things like that. And to the Raptors bench and second unit's credit, they showed it tonight. In the first, they had 19 points in the first half, which again is more than they had averaged in the last 2 games. Jamal and Jacoby Walter, they were scrapping immediately defensively. And I think Dwayne mentioned this before where, yes, the shots may not necessarily be falling sometimes, but as bench players, your job is to provide impact in as many ways as possible in as little time as possible. So it's with energy, it's with effort defensively, it's by being efficient with your opportunities. So again, get stops on one end, hit your shots when they come to you on the other end. And their credit, guys were doing it tonight. Jacoby Walter was being pesky on defense. He finishes 4 of 11 from the field. Now, some of those shots did come in garbage time. He didn't hit all of his, he wasn't the most efficient. Again, he went 0 of 5 from downtown, but he gets to the line and generates 3 free throws. He has 4 assists. He has 2 steals. So he's doing other things to impact the game. Jamal Sheikh the same way. Immediately when he checked into the game, the first thing he does is he finds RJ Barrett cutting on the baseline with a backdoor pass, and RJ finishes through contact for a dunk. So he's getting other guys involved. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing, which you hadn't really seen from Jamal Sheikh the last couple of games. Grady Dick, I thought it was awesome to see him back in the rotation. He basically, the last 5 games, or rather the last 2 weeks, he was not a part of the rotation. He had 5 minutes in one game against OKC. He was a DNP in 2 games in a row. And then the last 2 games, he played a total of 5 minutes, and that was because of garbage time. So going from that to getting a stint in the first quarter, basically the 3rd sub into the game and making an immediate impact for him, I thought was super important. Right away, he goes in transition, runs out, gets the ball from Brandon Ingram and finishes. It probably should have been an and 1-2, but he still got it to fall down. So he was able to make an impact there. He wasn't necessarily getting lost how you would kind of expect Grady Dick to be, especially after a bit of a layoff. He was doing his best on that end. He generated some free throws through contact as well, which is good for him. Ends up being a plus 14, winning his minutes. And look, the threes weren't falling. That's something Grady is going to have to come around on. It wasn't the perfect night because of that, but he won 1 of 4. But he's sticking with it. And you at this point, with the role that he has and the situation he's in, you have to just trust the process. So he ends up making his last 3, and you could just see the relief on him too. He visibly just like fist pumped and cheered with both hands. So it's weighing on him. So it was nice to see the 1-3 fall for him while he was doing some other stuff as well. But it was cool that Darko gave him another opportunity to get back into the rotation. And I think he did have a positive enough night that he should see another opportunity in the next couple of games. And then again, I mentioned Mamukelashvili. He had 13 points, which led all bench players for the Raptors, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. When he has it going offensively, you can just see so much juice and spark that he provides. And he had that tonight. And again, he was also flying around a bit defensively as well. So I wanted to give him his flowers for that, and the bench as a whole. A very good bounce back game for them, and hopefully they can keep it up and be that spark plug unit that we need them to be. But the guy that really did lead the show today was RJ Barrett. So now let's talk about him in the player of the game.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
All right, RJ, or should we start calling him Star J again? Yes, Star J Barrett seems to have returned, and he showed it in full force in this game tonight. In a game where all the attention was on another Duke Blue Devil in Cooper Flagg, RJ basically said, I'm the best Dookie here in this game. He finishes with a season-high 31 points on 13 of 19 shooting. He goes 3 of 7 from downtown as well, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, even throws in a steal there as well. He was getting after it on both ends of the floor, quite honestly, which was awesome to see. But it goes without saying that games like these are so positive to see from RJ Barrett because he's been kind of stacking his way back from injury, and you just see him being more and more comfortable with each game. And his ability to finish through contact is so alleviating for this Raptors as a whole, especially when you think about it in a playoff context when the refs are going to swallow their whistles a bit. It's going to be a much more physical game. And we've talked about how the Raptors struggle with physicality at times. So for RJ Barrett to constantly find different ways to generate free throws, to finish like through crafty angles and tough baskets where he puts a shoulder into a guy and he can take a bit of contact and still get the shot up. I think that's really important for what the Raptors want to try to accomplish on that end of the floor. And it also alleviates so much more pressure on this offense when a guy like Brandon Ingram isn't having the most efficient night. Like, I can't think of too many games this season where Brandon Ingram can have 11 points on 4 of 12 shooting, and the Raptors come out of it with not just a victory, but a victory to this extent, a 30-point win when Brandon Ingram didn't have a good offensive night. That didn't seem possible in these last couple games, especially when RJ Barrett wasn't there and when he was a bit rusty. The offense, it honestly kind of craters most nights when Brandon Ingram isn't having it going. So to see RJ carry the load or at least take that pressure off Brandon Ingram, it made such a difference. And that was positive to see. And RJ's been kind of stacking these games lately, to be quite honest. He's had over 20 points in his last 6 games now, I believe. He's been the Raptors' second leading scorer over that span as well, behind Brandon Ingram. So again, adding that secondary scorer and that elite play finisher next to a guy like Brandon opens things up for the Raptors for them. His burst is coming back. He had 2 really nice dunks in this game where he not only dunked it, but he dunked it through contact. And we've seen him finishing more in transition as well. So RJ Barrett seems to really be finding his footing, and it opens things up for the Raptors again. Now, do I think they're going to return to being a top 5 half-court offense in the NBA? I'm not entirely sure. I feel like a bit of it is the scout has kind of come out on the Raptors and how they like to play, so it's going to be something on them to adjust. But I do think they can be a top half of the league style offense in the half court if you have a guy like RJ Barrett continuing to produce like this. So we're going to have to hopefully see if they can keep doing that. But all that said, a milestone night for him, and hell yeah, RJ Barrett. Like I said, season high 31 points, but also he reaches the 8,000 point mark for his career. He's the 8th Canadian to do so. And at 25 years old, he's the youngest out of those group of Canadians to reach 8,000 points. He's the 54th player in NBA history to get to 8,000 plus points at age 25 or younger. So hell yeah for him. And if you look back at RJ Barrett's draft class, I believe of 2019, do you look at a guy like Zion Williamson and John Morant before him and how they seemed like the surefire picks, and RJ was kind of like the best of the rest? He's been the most consistent. He's been the most productive, and he's really fit in wherever he's gone or tried to play his role wherever he's gone without, saying I need to be this or I need to do that. So good on RJ Barrett for building out a strong career for himself. It's going to be interesting to see what his future is with the Raptors. Hopefully he can stick around and they can build something with him. But for now, we appreciate RJ Barrett's services for this team, and he had an awesome game against the Dallas Mavericks, and that's why he's our player of the game. But with all that being said, the Raptors essentially in this game did what they had to do. They built some much-needed positive momentum, and they looked pretty darn good in the process doing it. Now, the goal is to keep doing it. Keep doing it for 48 minutes. Keep doing it for as many games as possible. And like I said, keep taking care of business against these non-top 10 teams, which the Raptors are now, I believe, 32-10 against. So they've had a track record of being able to take advantage of these teams. They have to keep doing it, and hopefully that'll keep them in a solid position going into the playoffs. But with that being said, for myself, Zulfi Sheikh, that does it tonight. Thank you to everyone who tuned in live, and for those listening the morning after. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to Locked On Raptors on all platforms. And don't forget to comment below if you have any thoughts on the Raptors' 122-92 win over the Dallas Mavericks. But we will be back on Tuesday, hopefully with Dwayne Notice, live after the Raptors visit Kevin Durant and the Houston Rockets. So we'll see you then, breaking it all down on the Raptors Postcast. Peace.